this is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Today I'm going to talk about Caveat, which is debuting on Shudder on June 3rd, 2021. It's an atmospheric indie horror film that just does so much right. It is so unsettling, so tense. It is just a very well done film, and it's about an hour and a half of pure, not adrenaline. It's about an hour and a half of pure just holding your breath, because this film just really plays with your emotions. It plays with what you expect. It makes sure that the viewers stay on edge basically the entire time. But it does so in a really well done way. It's an Irish film written and directed by Damian McCarthy, and it stars Ben Caplan, Jonathan French, and Leila Sykes. In it, Isaac, who's kind of a drifter, agrees to watch the niece of Barrett. The niece lives in this cabin that's kind of in the woods all by herself, and so Isaac agrees to watch her for 5 days. He doesn't have much to do, and he doesn't really know what he's getting into, and that's kind of shown as the film progresses. He thinks he's just going to go sit in this house for 5 days, and then all of a sudden it's an isolated cabin that's surrounded by water, and Isaac can't swim. And then Olga, who's the niece, has some, I guess, manic episodes. I'm not really certain how, what the mental illness going on is, but she just has some erratic behavior. And also this cabin is just dilapidated. It's, there's a lot more going on than I think Isaac originally understands. And then kind of as everything progresses, it just gets worse, and it gets worse for him. And so this film it's so well done. Like, everything about this film is very, very thoughtful and kind of used to keep the viewer on edge. So here's a few things I liked about this film, and a few things I kind of wish were done differently. I'm not gonna say there's things I disliked about this film. There's things I kind of thought that could be done differently, but overall this film is very, very well done. And just to warn you, there will be some spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen the film, you can go to WatcherPass.com. You can read my written review. That's spoiler free, and I try to keep things very vague. Here there will be some spoilers, although I'm not going to go too much into it. So the first thing I liked is the atmosphere. As I mentioned, this house is it is dilapidated and falling apart and crumbling, and there's so much that is done to kind of set this up as a very unsettling place. You've got some older wiring, so sometimes the lights will go out. You've got some creaks in the house. You've got an intercom system, like an old school intercom system, that then you can have some sounds playing through that are a little unsettling. And then overall, this house just kind of sets everything up and makes sure you're always on edge. You always think that something's going to happen because everything is built up correctly, so that you're always wondering what will happen. So the first thing I love is the atmosphere. The second thing I love is just the build-up, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the atmosphere and how the film set it up. This movie, you've got about a 30-minute introduction to everything going on, and it goes so wonderfully slowly, so it lets you kind of see Isaac's unease as more and more things are revealed to him. First, he doesn't like that the house is isolated. He doesn't like it's surrounded by water, and then he finds some more things about it. And overall, it's just this really wonderful, slow setup that really kind of waits to get into, I guess, the meat of the film, which is nice. It gives you some time to understand the situation. It really lets you kind of stay on edge for this, because I was kind of on edge this entire film because I was waiting for something to happen, and that that's a fun experience, and it's a very, very well done and very good choice by the director. The third thing I love about this film is the lighting and the shot choice. This also kind of goes hand in hand with the atmosphere. The film has a lot of scenes that take place in the dark, or take place in confined spaces, and Isaac or some of the characters are only armed with a flashlight, so you'll get very little glimpses of what's going on, and it really, really keeps you on edge. You'll see the light go around, and you might catch something quickly, but you won't notice it, or it won't focus on it, and then the light will move away. Or some of the scenes that I was kind of chuckling at and also kind of holding my breath at. There were some scenes where the director kind of knew that's what you were expecting, so he kind of played with you. The light would go around, and the sound would kind of ramp up to make you expect it to be a scare, and then there'd be nothing, and then it would move around a little more, sound ramp up, and then there'd be nothing. And eventually, after like 3 or 4 of these, then the event happens. And those are fun to see. The director, I think, knew what he was doing and kind of knew what the audience was expecting, and really kind of played around with that. And the other kind of another aspect of that is the sound choice. There's good sound effects to keep you on edge, and some sound effects that you know one of the things that they talk about in this film is that there's foxes, and foxes crying at night sounds like I think it was like a girl crying is what they described it as, or someone screaming at night. And so you'll have those sounds throughout that kind of make you wonder, like, what's going on? Are the foxes, which is part of this film, or is that something else? And then the director's a really nice little play on that later at the end when someone actually does scream, and it kind of sounds like the foxes did earlier. So everything about this is very well done and very well tied together. And I normally do three, but here, I also really love, I'll do a fourth one. I really love the acting, especially Jonathan French's performance as Isaac. In the film, you've got him in his modern time, and then they have some scenes that cut back to kind of, I don't think it's that long ago. I think, maybe it's like a month or two earlier. And he looks so different. Like his character before he comes to the house looks so insanely different from his character when he's having these flashbacks. It's a really nice job of, showing him in a simpler time and then showing him in this kind of stressful situation, just kind of how much his character goes through, and the pain that he goes through in this film is really kind of evident on his face and his character. Jonathan grew out his hair, so he had a really long beard, and he kind of changed his gait and shook a lot more. And there was a lot of like really nice touches that he did to really sell this performance. And kind of hand in hand with that is Leila Sykes' performance as Olga. She doesn't get as much screen time, but she does have to go through a bunch of different types of characters and kind of some very unsettling situations, and she does it really, really well. Her when she has, I guess it's episode, I guess is what they call it in this film. She covers her eyes and just kind of doesn't move for a very long time, and she does that very well and in perfect situations. And then when she's up and about, she has this very kind of unreadable expression on her face and her unreadable character that kind of is very unpredictable. And that's part of the fun and tension in this film, is that her character is very unpredictable. So three things I didn't love about this film, although like I said, I love everything about this film. These are just little minor things. The first are the choices, but that kind of goes hand in hand with what I did like about this film, which is the tension and the build up. There are some very bad choices in this film. First, Isaac going to this cabin seemed like a bad choice, and then he agreed to wear this kind of harness. I guess it was sold so that he couldn't actually go into Olga's room and she'd feel safer. But it just set this up. What was going to happen, and it was he was kind of confined to this harness and kind of had to figure out how to get out in some instances. And there's a lot of really bad choices in this film that I didn't love, but they contribute to the film. So it's I think it goes hand in hand with what I did like about this movie. The second thing is it's a similar thing, but I called it kind of all the nopes. So this film had a whole lot of nopes going on, where these characters make choices that I was like, no, you should not do that. And that's that's a standard horror thing, but this movie did it very, very well. There were some scenes where they would go into the basement. I was like, why would you do that? Or there's scenes where they would look through a very narrow hole, and you're like, what's going to happen, but they did it anyways. And then there was one scene when Isaac should have just left the cabin. I think he probably didn't, because he couldn't swim and there was nowhere for him to go, but he should have left the cabin, but he stays and goes to sleep. And I'm like, why would you do that? Just leave, just run. Like, this is a bad situation. But if he did, then it wouldn't be a very interesting film. It'd be him there for like an hour, and then he leaves and runs away, and then the film's over. So I understand why they did that, but there was just a lot of little things that I was like, oh, you just don't do that. And the third thing that I didn't love, and this is actually kind of, it's not really a big criticism, but there are some supernatural aspects in the film that I didn't think this film actually needed. This is one of those kind of rare supernatural based films that could have just stood without any of them. And to be fair, the supernatural elements are very light. There's only a few instances where there is some sort of kind of supernatural aspect. There is this creepy rabbit, which I actually really loved, that kind of plays a drum when something strange is happening. Usually it involves the mother, who is dead, but then is she dead? There's a few things that happen that make you think she's a restless spirit. So the rabbit I thought was really good, but you didn't, you could have explained that away with just kind of Olga being, strange with the rabbit. And then there's a few instances later where there are some more kind of overt supernatural things, like someone's chain gets pulled, but very lightly. It doesn't, it doesn't like pull the person back. It kind of gets moved and you're not sure who's doing it. Or there's a scene, a lot of the supernatural aspects involve the dead mother and kind of her expression changing, or eventually, spoilers, eventually, she does end up moving. But even in those instances, there's not a lot to it. And I kind of thought that this film, kind of the director played with like the light and the sound, and played on kind of the viewer's expectations in those scenes. Like I thought this film, you could have had the kind of fear of a supernatural aspect, but without actually having it, and having everything be either in their minds or kind of be a tense buildup without then going that next step and having, the expression change, or having the corpse kind of come to life, things like that. So I thought this film, and part of this is because the supernatural elements are so light, and this film is so kind of steeped in atmosphere and practical kind of tension buildup. They didn't really need the supernatural parts of it to have that happen. And so that made me think, I wonder if they even needed the supernatural side at all. If it could just have gotten by with the expectation that there was something supernatural, but never actually having that happen. But that being said, they were very light, and they did kind of add some interesting, fun scenes. There's a really, fun, creepy scenes. There's a lot of things that are kind of fun and creepy, where Isaac is kind of trapped in a room with the body of the mother, and he kind of keeps swinging back with the light, and her expression will change a little bit each time. But it's like it'll be different. It'll continue to work. It'll switch back, and then her expression will change just slightly a little more. And it does provide some humor, but it also kind of provides a little, some uneasy aspects. So in those respects, the supernatural aspects were good. But I think it could have also just had him continue to go back and forth, waiting for something to happen. But that being said, Caveat it's a really, really well done indie film. I believe it's Damian McCarthy's directorial debut. So hats off to him and all the people who were involved in this film. It's very tense. It's very atmospheric, and it's just very well done. If you watch this, you'll kind of be on edge for the entire time. But it is such an experience that I definitely think you should have it. It comes out June 3rd on Shudder, so you can stream it at home. You can have as many lights on or off as you want, and just kind of enjoy this hour and a half roller coaster. It's not really a roller coaster, it's an hour and a half experience. So if you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me a lot and make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And as always, please go to watchyourpast.com for all your movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Thank you.